Okay, so yesterday you should have read through the text, hair today, gone tomorrow, and then you completed this graphic organizer that you see on your screen here. And just like I did in the teacher video on Monday, you went through and you looked at these statements that are provided here in the box, right? And after reading these, you had to determine which one was the main idea and then 3 key supporting details. You also had to figure out which of those statements you decided to leave out. As in, if you were writing a summary, you probably would not include this detail in your summary of the text because it's not necessarily a key supporting detail. So let's go back and let's take a look at this work that you completed. All right, so when I look at these bulleted sentences or ideas that came from the text, hair today, gone tomorrow, I can see that there are some dates that kind of jumps off the page at me. When I read through here, let's see, in the 1960s, young people rebelled by letting their hair grow long. Well, I know that in the beginning of the text it said that people were wearing their hair kind of long, it was tied back, and then it changed, and then people wearing it like up, and they had these big elaborate hairstyles, and that was even supported, right, in this graphic, this lovely picture here of this lady. And then it said that things changed. Women were kind of wearing like really short hairstyles, maybe like mine, to show like a bob. And then it changed again. Then it went back to long, and then even boys are wearing their hair long as like a sign of rebellion. And then it said that, let's see, so basically I guess what I'm putting together here is that it's changed a lot over the years. So hairstyles have changed. So now let's look and see. So that one supports the idea that hair has changed, that people were letting it grow long, that in the 1700s, women wore large, elaborate hairstyles, so very detailed or fancy. So that's another way that hair was styled or worn. Women in the 1920s cut their hair to show their independence. Okay, so again, it's changed. Teenagers of the 1960s use an iron to press their curly hair to make it straight. And the last one, hair fashions change over time and are used to make unusual statements. Okay, so let's look at these details. Now, if I look here, I can identify that the main idea was how hair fashions change over time to make unusual statements. So, hair fashions change to make unusual statements. So now this part's pretty tricky, guys. When we try to find those key supporting details that support this idea that hair fashions have changed over time to make unusual statements. So change is a key word there. Let's look at the remaining details here. Young people rebelled by letting their hair grow long. Women wore large, elaborate hairstyles. Women cut their hair to show their independence. And then teenagers used an iron to press their curly hair to make it straight. So this is pretty tricky here because technically, in my opinion, all of these actually support the main idea. But if I were going to choose 3, I know that looking at this, it's mostly about women, right? Even though it's not stated here in the main idea, most of this story was about how women's hair has changed and how it's gone from like long to short and back to long, right? So if I were going to choose 3 key details, this is almost like too similar in my opinion, but if I were going to choose, I would say that this key detail supports the main idea. See, I don't really know what just happened with my sentence. Let me try that again. So young people rebelled by letting their hair grow long. Okay. And then in the 1700s, women wore large, elaborate hairstyles. last one. And this is where I'm kind of torn because they both support the idea, though, about how hair has changed. However, now I'm having a moment. When I look at that main idea again, take a look at the second part here. This is kind of a big deal. They're doing this to make unusual statements. So now let's see. When it says here that young people rebelled by letting their hair grow long, that's kind of a key word there in that detail that supports the unusual statements. They're trying to make a statement about their hair. People expect it to be short, they're growing it long. Let's look right here. We're making a statement, right? We have these large, elaborate hairstyles. So that's the part of this key detail that supports the unusual statements. So now let's look at the remaining two details to see which one really supports that idea that it's changed and to make a statement. Women cut their hair to show their independence, or teenagers use an iron to press their curly hair to make it straight. The key detail that I think best supports the main idea is that women cut their hair to show their independence. And again, it's this part right here that supports that idea of making a statement. So when we went down here, the last part, the detail that you decided to leave out, the detail that I left out was that teenagers use an iron to make their hair straight. I left this out because it does not support the idea that hair was being used to make a statement. So this one was pretty tricky today, guys, but again, just really paying close attention to the words that are stated in the main idea and then thinking about, are they really reflected in these details? In part 2 of this video, I'm going to go through and introduce you to the text that you're going to read today. It all began with a space war. So see you in part 2. All right, so we are back. This is part 2. And you can see that we are going to read this text. It all began with space war. And I look at this little figure here. Kind of reminds me of an old video game. I don't know. I know a lot of you guys play video games. And then I also see down here a timeline. So different dates maybe in history. And it looks like, if I look here, we start with the 1950s. Researchers use computers to play checkers and other games. So we're talking about games. And we're talking about playing them on computers. Then we go down here to 1962. Space war is invented. That's the title of my story. And then in 1971, Ralph Baer begins work on a computer game to play on a home TV. That kind of sounds more like what I'm familiar with when I think of a video game, but I can see we've moved from computer and game to TV. Then in 1975, a home version of the game Pong becomes available. So now here's the name of another game, I'm assuming. Yep, game Pong. Then in 1977, a revolutionary home video game system with joysticks and game cartridges is introduced. So I see revolutionary means that it's changed, and video game system, it has joysticks and game cartridges. Look at that. Quite different. And then in 1979, a variety of new video games began to flood the market. So variety means several to choose from, and we're talking still about video games. Flood the market means that they are all over the place. So why did Mrs. Body just spend time looking at this timeline? I was supposed to introduce you guys to a text. Well, what I did, I modeled for you what I would do as a reader. I see a nonfiction text feature here, a timeline. So I'm just going to take a peek at this, and right away I know that this article is probably all about, I'm just going to make an inference here, video games and how they've changed. Again, using my background knowledge, I've seen things like this before, along with what I see presented here in the text to make an inference or a decision. We're still focused, though, on summarizing. And I know that I have to use my knowledge of the main idea and key details presented in this text to help me write a summary. Or, in this case, like we're going to do today, to help me respond to some multiple choice questions. Questions that have to do with summarizing informational text. So right away I can see there's a keyword that jumps out at me. Space War, world's first video game. And that's honestly, guys, like the first thing I saw when I glanced down at this text. So I want to go through for you, because we know that we don't always have those graphic organizers available. We have to really practice as readers. How can we use different strategies as we're going through a text to help us so that we understand what we've read? So first I'm going to jump in and look at paragraph 1. 2 enemy spaceships slowly circled each other on a black and white screen. Black and white. I'm going to underline that. That's like long ago. One spaceship accelerated, as the other rotated to the right. The first spaceship fired a silent missile at its opponent. I know what a missile is. The missile missed its target. The second spaceship returned fire. Its missile hit the enemy and erased it from the screen. So if I read that paragraph alone, I would know that they are describing a video game. I'm just going to put describes game. So as readers, sometimes we often have to underline or even jot down ideas as we go. Let's read paragraph 2. This was the scene on the screen of Space War, the world's first video game. This historic game ushered in the age of electronic games. For me, remember, I want to know what each paragraph is mostly about, so at the end I can determine the main idea and key details of this entire article. I want to know what each of these paragraphs is mostly about, and that one was about how this is the first video game. So today, you're going to continue reading on. You're going to learn more about this first video game and how it helped kind of pave the way for future video games and how it helped change the history of video games. So just like I've done, I would print this article. I would read through one paragraph at a time, kind of jot down what the main idea is. And then at the end, if you'd like to use that graphic organizer, again, with main idea and key details, I will have one and you can take that to complete. When you're finished, you will be responding to some multiple choice questions. So let's take a look. Very similar to the graphic organizer that we did together, you're going to have to drag and drop to place these statements in the correct boxes. The next question is going to ask you which one of those was not important enough to include in a summary of the article. So in our whole group meetings, we've been tying what we're doing together with main idea and details into writing a summary. So you're going to do that right here on your own today. After that, now you have a question that's going to focus on a summary, but just within one of the paragraphs, paragraph 8. So you're going to have to go back and reread paragraph 8. They are numbered for you. And then in the next question, you have to find a sentence from the passage, so from paragraph 8, that best supports your answer right here. In the last question, you're using your background knowledge and clues in the text to help you figure out the meaning of this word right here, average, as it is used right here in this sentence. Let me know if you have any questions.